A Treatise of Satan's Temptations. Part 2. By Richard Gilpin. A Discourse of the Malice, Power, Cruelty and Diligence of Satan. Of the various ways by which he hinders peace. 1. Way by discomposures of spirit. These discomposures explained, by showing, 1. What advantage he takes from our natural temper, and what tempers give him this advantage. And more. Chapter 6. Part 5. 2. Discomposures of soul afford the devil fit matter to work upon. They furnish him with strong objections against sincerity of holiness, by which the peace of conscience, being strongly assaulted, is at last overthrown. The usual weapons by which Satan fights against the assurance of God's children, are the guilt of sins committed and the neglect of duty. And the disturbed soul affords enough, of both these to make a charge against itself, for 1. Where there is much discomposure there is much sin. If in the multitude of words there wants not iniquity, then much more in the multitude of unruly thoughts. A disturbed spirit is like troubled water. All the mud that lay at the bottom is raised up and mixeth itself with the thoughts. If any injury or loss do trouble the mind, all the thoughts are tinctured with anger, pride, impatience, or whatsoever root of bitterness was in the heart before. We view them not singly as the issues of wise providence, but ordinarily we consider them as done by such instruments, and against ourselves, as malicious, spiteful, causeless, ungrateful wrongs. And then we give too great a liberty to ourselves to rage, to meditate revenge, to threaten, to reproach, and what not. And if our disposition have not so strong a natural inclination to these distempers, yet the thoughts by discomposure are quickly leavened. It is the comparison used by the Apostle, 1 Corinthians 5:8, to express the power of malice, which is a usual attendant in this service, to infect all the imaginations with a sharpness, which makes them swell into exorbitancy and excess. Hence proceed revilings, quarrelings, etc. When the tongue is thus fermented, it is a fire, a world of iniquity, producing more sins than can be reckoned. It defileth the whole body, engaging all the faculties in heady pursuit. James 3:6. 2. Discomposures obstruct duties. This is the inconvenience which the Apostle, 1 Peter 3:7, tells us doth arise from disturbances among relations. If the wife or husband do not carry well, so that discontents or differences arise, their prayers are hindered. Duties then are obstructed. 1. In the act. When the heart is out of frame, prayer is out of season, and there is an averseness to it. Partly because all good things are, in such confusions, burdensome to the humor that then prevails, which eats out all desire and delight to spiritual things. And partly because they dare not come into God's presence, conscious of their own guilt, and awe of God hindering such approaches. 2. They obstruct the right manner of performance, straitening the heart and contracting the spirit, that if anything be attempted it is poorly and weakly performed. 3. And also the success of duty is obstructed by discomposure. God will not accept such services, and therefore Christ adviseth to leave the gift before the altar, though ready for offering, where the spirit is overcharged with offenses or angry thoughts, and first to go and be reconciled to our brother, and then to come and offer the gift, it being lost labor to do it before. Matthew 5:24. From these sins of omission and commission Satan can, and often doth, frame a dreadful charge against those that are thus concerned, endeavoring to prove by these evidences that they are yet, notwithstanding pretense of conversion, in the gall of bitterness and bond of iniquity. Acts 8:23, whereby the peace of conscience is much shaken. And the more because also. 3. These discomposures of soul give Satan a fit season for the management of his accusation. Strong accusations do often effect nothing when the season is unsuitable. Many a time he hath as much to say against the comforts of men, when yet they shake all off, as Paul did the viper off his hand, and feel no harm. Acts 28:3. But that which prepares the conscience to receive the indictment is a particular disposition which it is wrought into by suspicious credulity and fearfulness. These make the heart, as wax to the seal, ready to take any impression that Satan will stamp upon it. Now, by long disturbances, he works the heart into this mold very often, and upon a double account he gains himself a fit opportunity, to charge home his exceptions. 1. In that he sets upon the conscience with his accusations after the heart hath been long molested and confused with its other troubles. For then the heart is weakened, and unable to make resistance as at other times. An assault with a fresh party after a long conflict disorders its forces, and puts all to flight. 2. In that long and great discomposures of mind bring on a distemper of melancholy. For it is notoriously known by common experience that those acid humors producing this distemper, which have their rise from the blood, may be occasioned by their violent passions of mind, the animal spirits becoming inordinate by long discomposures of sadness, envy, terror, and fretful cares, and the motion of the blood being retarded, it by degrees departs from its temperament, and is infected with an acidity, so that persons no way inclined naturally to melancholy may yet become so by the disquiets of their troubled mind. Both these ways, but chiefly melancholy, the devil hath his advantage for disturbing the conscience. Melancholy most naturally inclines men to be solicitous for their soul's welfare. But withal disposeth them so strongly to suspect the worst, for it is a credulous, suspicious humor in things hurtful, and afflicts so heavily with sadness for what it doth respect, that when Satan lays before men of that humor their miscarriages unto their discontents, their impatience, unthankfulness, anger, rash thoughts, and speeches against God or men, etc. Withal suggesting that such a heart cannot be right with God, after serious thoughts upon Satan's frequently repeated charge, they cry out, "Guilty, guilty." And then begins a new trouble for their unregenerate estate, and their supposed lost souls. For, in this case usually Satan hath greater liberty to accuse, and by his accusations to molest the conscience, in that men of discomposed spirits, by the manifold evils arising thence, provoke God to desert them, and to leave them in Satan's hand to be brought into an hour of temptation. Satan's commission is occasioned by our provocations, and the temptations arising from such a commission are usually dreadful. They are solemn temptations, and called so after a singular manner. For of these I take those scriptures to be meant, "Watch and pray, that ye enter not into temptation," Matthew 26:41, and "Lead us not into temptation," Matthew 6:13. Such temptations are not common temptations, and are of unknown force and hazard to the soul, which way soever they are designed, either for sin or terror. For several things do concur in a solemn temptation. As, 1. Satan doth in a special manner challenge a man to the combat, or rather he challenges God to give him such a man to fight with him, as he did concerning Job. This, Christ tells us of, Luke 22:31, "Simon, Satan hath desired to have you." The word signifies a challenging or daring, xi alpha iota tau epsilon sigma theta alpha iota, and it seems the devil is oft daring God to give us into his hand, when we little know of it. 2. There is also a special suitableness of occasion and snare to the temper and state of men. Thus he took Peter at an advantage in the high priest's hall. And in the case we now speak of, he takes advantage of men's provocations and melancholy. 3. There is always a violent prosecution, which our Saviour expresseth under the comparison of sifting, which is a restless agitation of the corn, bringing that which was at the bottom to the top, and shuffling the top to the bottom, so that the chaff or dirt is always uppermost. 4. And to all this there is divine permission, Satan let loose, and we left to our ordinary strength, as is implied in that expression, "He hath desired to have you that he might sift you." Now then, if the devil have such ground to give God a challenge concerning such men, and if God do, as he justly may, leave such men, whose bitterness of spirit hath been as a smoke in his nostrils all the day, Isaiah 65:5, in Satan's hand, he will so shake them that their consciences shall have no rest. And this he can yet the more easily effect, because 5. Discomposures of spirit have a particular tendency to incline our thoughts to severity and harshness, so that those who have had long and great disturbances, upon any outward occasions, of loss, affliction, or disappointment, etc. do naturally think, after a solemn review of such troubles, harshly of God and of themselves. They are ready to conclude that God is surely angry with them, in that he doth afflict them, or that they have unsanctified hearts, in that their thoughts are so fretful and unruly, upon every inconsiderable petty occasion. It is so ordinary for men under the weight of their trouble, or under the sense of their sin, to be sadly apprehensive of God's wrath in their soul's hazard, that it were needless to offer instances, let David's case be instead of all. That his troubles begot such imaginations frequently, may be seen throughout the book of the Psalms. Thanks.